Right now, wherever you are surrounded by light. You don't think about it. You don't even notice it. But for most of human history, darkness wasn't an inconvenience. It was a wall. And the only thing standing between you and total, suffocating blackness was a small, trembling flame, one that smelled like boiled animal fat and could go out at any moment. That's not ancient history. That's your ancestors. And tonight we're going to talk about how the world learned to see in the dark. Imagine it is the year 1400. The sun goes down, and the darkness that follows is not city dark, not the power went out kind of dark. It is cave dark. Complete, absolute, pressing in on your skin like a hand over your face. Your only source of light is a small, flickering flame mounted on a stub of rendered cattle grease. It does not smell like a candle shop. It does not smell like vanilla or cedar or anything remotely pleasant. It smells like the inside of a roasting pan, like boiled fat scraped from the bottom of a butcher's pot. That was your light. That was everyone's light, every single night, for thousands of years. Before electricity, the average working-class family in England spent nearly 10% of their entire annual income on candles. 10%. On light. That figure was higher than what they spent on clothing. Higher than what they spent on medicine. Because without light, after dark, you could not work. You could not read. You could not see your children's faces across a room. The sun didn't just set, it ended your productive day entirely. We tend to think of the candle as a romantic object, something you pull out for a birthday cake or a quiet dinner. But for the vast majority of human beings who have ever walked this earth, the candle wasn't romance. It was survival. The earliest candles we know of trace back to ancient Egypt, roughly 5,000 years ago, around 3000 BC. But they were not candles in the way we would recognize them today. They were rushlights, dried reeds harvested from riverbanks, soaked in rendered animal fat, and lit at one end. No wick, no wax, no holder. You simply gripped one end, lit the other, and hoped the wind didn't come through the door. The Romans made meaningful improvements. They developed wick-based candles, rolled papyrus dipped in tallow or beeswax, and they became a genuine household tool. Roman soldiers carried them on campaigns. Households burned them through the night. And already, even in ancient Rome, a social divide was forming in the smoke. Beeswax candles burned clean. They produced a soft, steady light and carried a faint, almost pleasant scent of honey. These were reserved for temples, wealthy homes, and religious ceremonies. Tallow candles, made from rendered beef or mutton fat, the exact same stuff you skim off a pot of soup and throw away, burned with thick black smoke, dripped constantly, and smelled like someone had left a very old, very bad cut of meat on an open fire. Tallow candles were what almost everyone used for the next 1,000 years. They were not a compromise. They were simply the only option most people ever knew. By the Middle Ages, candlemaking had become one of the most important industries in Europe. Every town of any size had chandlers, and in major cities like London, the trade had split into two fiercely competing factions, the tallow chandlers and the wax chandlers. These were not rival craftsmen with a professional rivalry. They despised each other. The Guild of Tallow Chandlers, which gained independence standing around the year 1462 in London, and the Guild of Wax Chandlers were locked in ongoing territorial disputes for generations. Who had the right to supply which buildings? Who could sell in which neighborhoods? Who controlled the contracts for the great cathedrals? Because this was serious business. Beeswax candles were the light of churches, aristocratic households, and royal courts. They were symbols of holiness, of status, of refinement. Tallow candles were the light of everyone else, the working poor, the tradesmen, the farmers, the vast majority of the population whose homes could be identified by their smell before you ever knocked on the door. Wealthy homes lit by beeswax were said to be recognizable by scent from the outside. Your nose told you the economic story of a household before your eyes ever could. And beyond the smell, tallow candles had a deeply practical problem. They melted unevenly. They sputtered and flared. The wick would bend under the weight of accumulated carbon, what chandlers called the snuff, creating a thick lump that dimmed the flame, filled the room with acrid smoke, and had to be trimmed constantly with a special tool. In wealthy households, this was not an occasional chore. It was an assigned job. A servant in a great house might spend a portion of every evening doing nothing but tending the wicks, keeping the candles burning cleanly. No one thought this was unusual. Light required maintenance, and maintenance required people. In the 18th century, something extraordinary happened, and it came from the ocean. American whalers discovered that inside the enormous heads of sperm whales lived a waxy, crystalline substance called spermaceti. It was unlike anything anyone had encountered in the candle trade. It burned cleaner than beeswax, brighter than tallow, produced almost no smoke and practically no odor. Spermaceti candles were, by every meaningful measure, the finest candles the world had ever seen. The whaling industry erupted almost overnight. By 1770, American whalers were producing tens of thousands of spermaceti candles annually. The town of New Bedford, Massachusetts became the candle capital of the world. Fortunes were made. Entire regional economies were built on the harvest of sperm whales. And for a brief, luminous moment, it seemed as though the problem of light had been solved for anyone who could afford the answer. But they could not sustain it. The whales were being hunted toward extinction. By the early 1800s, overhunting had so severely reduced sperm whale populations that whaling ships had to venture farther, stay at sea longer, and face greater dangers for fewer and fewer returns. The spermaceti candle was the first truly clean, bright, high-quality candle available at commercial scale. And it was already dying, taking an entire species of animal down with it. In 1811, a French chemist named Michel-Eugène Chevreul began a meticulous investigation into the nature of animal fats. Over the following years, he succeeded in doing something no one had managed before, separating the fatty acids within tallow into their distinct components. One of those acids, stearic acid, was remarkable. When isolated and refined into what became known as stearin, it burned harder, cleaner, and far more slowly than raw tallow. It did not drip. It did not produce black smoke. It did not fill a room with the smell of scorched meat. By 1825, Chevreul and his colleague Joseph Louis Gay-Lussac had taken out patents in France and England for the commercial manufacture of stearin candles. Within 2 decades, stearin candles were being produced in factories across France and spreading rapidly through Europe. They burned like beeswax but cost a fraction of the price. For the first time in human history, the working class could afford a candle that did not punish them with smoke and stench simply for wanting to see after dark. And here is the part that most history books leave out entirely. The factories producing stearin candles in 19th century France were staffed predominantly by working-class women. Many of these women had come from the old tallow trade, brutal, physically demanding, malodorous work, and found themselves operating cleaner, more mechanized production lines in the new stearin facilities. They did not merely work on the line. Many became expert technicians who understood the chemistry of what they were handling, adjusted the ratios of fatty acids, refined the mold designs, and improved the production process from the inside out. The modern candle as we recognize it today, clean, even burning, affordable, and accessible, was built largely by the hands of women whose names history never bothered to record. In December of 1848, one of the greatest scientific minds who ever lived stood before an audience of young people at London's Royal Institution and said something that has never stopped being true. There is no more open door by which you can enter into the study of natural philosophy than by considering the physical phenomena of a candle. This was Michael Faraday, the man who discovered the principles of electromagnetism. And he chose a candle. His 6-lecture Christmas series, later published under the title The Chemical History of a Candle, became one of the most celebrated science lectures in history. He walked his audience through combustion chemistry, capillary action, the behavior of gases, and the true nature of light itself. Every answer he gave opened into another question. Every question led deeper into physics, chemistry, and the structure of the natural world. What Faraday understood, and what catches most people off guard when they first learn it, is that a candle flame is one of the most chemically complex events that can be observed with the naked eye. The combustion process occurring in that small, quiet flame involves hundreds of distinct chemical reactions happening simultaneously. The thing you light for atmosphere, the thing you blow out on a birthday cake, is a masterpiece of thermochemistry. Faraday saw that. He wanted everyone else to see it too. In 1879, Thomas Edison demonstrated a working incandescent light bulb. Within a single generation, electric lighting had transformed from a curiosity to a standard fixture in most American cities. By 1920, the idea of lighting your home by burning rendered fat seemed almost absurd. The candle industry, thousands of years old and woven into the economic and cultural fabric of civilization, appeared to face extinction virtually overnight. But something unexpected happened. People kept buying candles. Not because they needed light. They had light in abundance now, but because of something a candle does that electricity simply cannot replicate. Psychologists have a name for the particular mental state that a flickering flame produces. It activates the same kind of meditative calm as flowing water or rustling leaves, a deep, instinctive response rooted in hundreds of thousands of years of human experience gathered around fire. Electric light is static. A candle flame breathes. It moves. It responds to the air in the room. It behaves, in some irreducible way, like something alive. Today, the global candle market is estimated at over $21 billion worldwide, with the United States alone accounting for more than $5 billion in retail sales annually. We have LED lights capable of illuminating entire stadiums. We have screens that outshine the midday sun. And yet, we still buy candles by the tens of millions every year. The candle has outlived every technology that was supposed to render it obsolete. It outlived oil lamps. It outlived gas lighting. It survived electrification. Because it was never simply a light source. It was a marker of time. The wealthy classes of medieval England measured their beeswax candles by the inch, each inch representing 1 hour, literally watching time burn away in front of them. It was a symbol of social standing, a scientific instrument that one of history's greatest minds spent 6 lectures unpacking, and a technology that was refined into its modern, democratic form by working women whose contributions were never celebrated. Most of all, it was a small act of defiance against the dark. Every person who has ever lived has known darkness. And for most of human history, the only answer to that darkness was a small, trembling flame held in the hand. When you light a candle today, you are doing something your ancestors did 10,000 years ago. You are doing something every generation in between did too, not for ambience, not for mood, not for the photograph. For the oldest reason in the world. Because without light, there is only dark.